Hey everyone, welcome back to University 300, week 2. You all made it through the first week. Hooray. So this week we're going to be talking about source evaluation and a method of source evaluation called SIFT, which you will all learn about, so the acronym will not be unfamiliar anymore. So you all know the drill by now, but this week we'll be talking about information and the information cycle, as well as exploring what source evaluation is and why it's important. Then we're going to go over the Check Please SIFT starter course, which is going to be what the majority of your work will be over the next 2 weeks. And then we'll just kind of briefly cover what is due at the end of this week. So moving on to information in the information cycle. Last week we talked about research and what it's comprised of. But before we actually get into the process of how to research, it's important to understand how information moves. Knowing what stage information is in can help us determine what's useful for our own research needs and interests. Information is valuable and useful at each stage of the information cycle, but each stage of information serves a different purpose and is intended for different things. So, especially lately, I'm sure you all have encountered some kind of news media. You've probably encountered it at least 10 times today. News media and social media posts are known as kind of popular media or information. Popular media usually covers current events and consists of general interest articles. Popular media's primary purpose is to inform, entertain, or elicit an emotional response and is intended for the general public. An example of popular media or information would be something from the New York Times, CNN, Fox News, local televised news like ABC7 or whoever, posts on social media or popular magazines like Time magazine also count. And I forgot to mention that I'm describing the differences between 3 types of information: popular, scholarly, and trade. So conversely, you have probably encountered the terms scholarly or peer-reviewed, and these terms are often used interchangeably, so you can think about them the same way. But you've probably encountered them throughout your education or academic career. Unlike popular media, scholarly or peer-reviewed information/media consists of research results or reports, reviews of research, or book reviews. It's intended to share research scholarship with the academic community and is directed towards other scholars and researchers. Scholarly media usually consists of academic journal articles or books, but it doesn't have to be. An example of a scholarly source would be something like the New England Journal of Medicine. And then finally we have trade media or trade information. And this may be one that you are less familiar with, but trade media consists of articles about a certain business or industry and is intended to inform about business or industry news, trends, or products. It's directed at business or industry professionals, so it's closer to a scholarly peer review because it's directed at other experts, but it doesn't really go through the same peer review process. An example of a trade publication would be something like Game Industry Report magazine, Library Journal. I'm sure there's probably like a plumber's magazine out there. That would be a good example of what a trade magazine is. So now we're going to move on to the actual information cycle. So here we have kind of a graphic of the information cycle. So the information cycle is the progression of media coverage of a particularly newsworthy event, and it includes both scholarly and popular media. You'll see here a graph of how information flows through time. So starting the day of an event, there will be television broadcasts, social media posts, and breaking news articles floating around the web. As journalists and reporters learn more about the event and what happened, newspapers will begin to publish articles the week of the event. So now we're about here. Considering most popular magazines publish on a weekly or bi-monthly basis, so every other week, popular magazines will publish articles or opinion pieces the week after the event. As information travels from journalists and other on-the-ground reporters, the months following the event will allow for scholars or academics and other experts to analyze research and compile findings to be published in academic or scholarly journals. Sometimes, depending on the event or what they're researching, this can take upwards of a year or more. Finally, once we hit about the year mark or more, you'll start to see the information being included in published books, government reports and publications, and in reference collections and libraries, since these things often rely on the work done by everyone else in the information cycle. So, I want to take a second and talk about when it may be appropriate to use information at different stages in the information cycle. Because like what I mentioned earlier, each piece of this, the tweet, the newspaper article, the popular magazine article, the scholarly journal, or the government publication, are all valuable and can be used in research, but you have to make sure that you're using it in kind of a holistic manner. And we're going to talk about source evaluation shortly, but it's important to remember that information at that first stage, the day of television, social media, the web, is still important and can be used. So for example, if you wanted to cite a tweet from someone who is on the front line of an event, that's great. That you can totally do that, and it can provide some really strong support in whatever your research is, as long as it's not the only thing that you're using. And good research looks at a research question holistically, and these different types of sources can complement each other well. So if you're going to use that tweet, make sure that you're also using kind of an academic or scholarly journal. And of course, this is dependent on the assignment or what your instructor is asking for, but there's a place in your research for each of these things. So now we're going to move on to this thing called source evaluation. So we know we can identify types of information, popular, scholarly, trade, and stages of information, the information cycle, but how do we know if it's trustworthy? Enter, with a bunch of fancy little stars, source evaluation. There are many different methods, tools, and approaches to source evaluation besides the one that we'll be talking about most in depth, but they all revolve around the same idea of determining whether information is trustworthy and suitable for your needs and your research project. So considering that you all consume massive amounts of information on a daily basis, whether it's for your job, for school, in your personal time through things like social media, even like TV, movies, video games, books, you're consuming information, right? Source evaluation is something that you're probably already intuitively doing because you're users of the internet. And I want you throughout today's kind of lesson and as you move forward, think about the ways in which you determine the credibility or validity of a video you see online, or a claim or an article or what have you. Do you immediately trust the claim the video is making? Do you conduct any background research when you encounter a claim on the web? If you're asking yourself any of those questions, or if you see something in a Facebook comment or a Reddit comment or what have you, and you decide to do some research, you're already doing source evaluation, and that's already great. So now we're going to dive into actually this mystical method of source evaluation known as SIFT. So SIFT is usually used for kind of evaluating popular media, but it can be adopted for evaluating scholarly sources as well. And again, SIFT, it's called SIFT, and it's also known as 4 moves and a habit. And the S stands for stop, I is investigate the source, the F is find better coverage, T, trace claims, quotes, and media to the original context. So this SIFT is the primary content of that little mini course that I talked about earlier that you'll be doing over the next 2 weeks. But it's just one method or tool of source evaluation, so just keep that in mind. So the majority of your assignments over the next 2 weeks will focus on completing this thing called Check Please. There's 5 lessons covered in Check Please, and it should introduce you to the concepts of source evaluation and give you some basic skills that you'll be able to use throughout your life, both in academia and outside of it. So some of you may be familiar with this tool software called Notion, and that's what Notion's often used for like productivity kind of stuff, but Notion is what this Check Please course is hosted on. And there's a link in Canvas, of course, but I thought I would just give you guys a little demo real fast. Surprise of the homework. So you'll have this link, and this is just what the Check Please SIF Starter course looks like. Nicholas and I have drafted a little note for you guys so you know what you're supposed to be working on when. So you can navigate the course through the left-hand side, and you can navigate through these links. So for this week, all you're going to worry about is lessons 1, 2, and 3. And then next week, you'll learn about 4 and 5. So you're going to, so you can follow this link, and you can follow this link. Goes to the same place. They should all be kind of interconnected. So you're going to go through this course, and you don't have to take note of the vocabulary words unless you want to, but there will be some activities and articles that you should finish. I'm not going to check if you did them. You'll have some reflection questions to then answer in your personal research journal on Canvas. But in order to get the best understanding of the content of these lessons, you want to make sure that you're doing the activities. And then these reflection questions will be listed in the Canvas, in an assignment document on Canvas, but they're also at the end of each lesson here. So they're just these little check boxes. So again, this week you're just going to be doing lessons 1, 2, and 3. And next week you'll finish the course with 4 and 5. And then to go back to our presentation, which is basically what I just said, but complete Check Please Starter Course lessons 1, 2, and 3, and then you're going to respond to those personal, or those reflection questions on your personal research journal discussion board on Canvas. So that's all we have for this week. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm just kidding. That's a bad joke. But if you have any questions or you need some clarification, don't hesitate to reach out to Nicholas or I. I know if you're not familiar with Notion, it looks a little bit different than other kind of web pages you may have seen. So feel free to reach out if you need help navigating it. No worries at all. More than happy to show you the ropes. But with that, I hope you all have a great week, and I'll see you next week. Bye!